And welcome back to topic 2 in our Contribute to Cybersecurity Risk Management unit, which is conducted under license from RTO Works. So in this one, we'll be looking at implementing risk management strategies. And what does that mean? Well, it means how we go about incorporating these ideas into our business. So it's very important for us to communicate what these strategies are to the key stakeholders. We also need to maintain our documentation to comply with our strategies. So this requires us to monitor the strategies and how successful they are in the process. So we need to get feedback from those involved and to stay on top of any new potential risks within the process. So part of that communication is making sure everybody is up to date with what the strategies are, any changes in the strategy, and these stakeholders need to be informed in a timely manner. What we want to do is promote a culture of positive risk. So no business is without risk. It is not possible. So what we want to do is promote a safe environment that is meeting the type of risk factor that the organisation is aiming for. Now, this is why we need to have good policies and procedures in place, and part of that is how we're going to communicate that strategy across to our workforce. Now, we can do this through consultation and training, but other ways we can involve people and get them to manage the risks that they go through within their business day. So how are they going to manage the risks that they encounter? How any risk that's encountered is reported? How they can express their concerns about the strategies or the processes that they need to go through? And whether they feel there's any new risks that they come across, how they report those and get them actioned. So we need to have clear communication with roles defined. So does the person just need to report it to their manager, or is there a central person, committee, something that receives these reports and deals with the threats? So how do you go about communicating these things to your staff? Well, you can do it via meetings, disseminate it, through committee, written materials, doing workshops, through the corporate social media, or the internal network. Now, it doesn't need to be always formal. It can even be informal. But one of the things we should have as a corporate body is a communication plan. And within that plan, we need to have listing of the purpose and the content, who's responsible, whose roles are the ones responsible for communicating these changes to people. So, what frequency do we need to do these reviews and keep people up to date and go through the process again? Because remember, any organisation will have staff turnover. So we can't just put it out there once and expect everybody to absorb it naturally. Unless we are proactive in communication, it doesn't work. I'll give you an example of one of the organisations I worked at. The team leaders only communicated between themselves. They made any changes and just added them to the induction pack. Now that's great at capturing new employees as they came on board. But they didn't bother telling anybody else to keep going back and reviewing the induction pack to stay up to date with any changes in procedures and policies. So that's a bit of a problem. That's where not having a good or any communication plan falls through. So the plan needs to outline the methods, the way you're going to communicate, which roles are responsible for taking what actions, under what timelines. You also need to monitor and reevaluate how good these plans are and strategies are being absorbed by people within your organisation. It's no use just saying this is the way we're going to communicate and not evaluating it, because it may not be effective, so you're not getting the return on investment that you need. We always need to approach anything that we do around security and communication in a structured manner so that it provides good guidance to our people, which helps them to understand why we're implementing these strategies to reduce the risk and make things a more pleasant environment for us to work in. Now, there's plenty of material around about risk management. This is a fairly common term within business. IT, cyber, it's just part of business. So risk management needs to be applied from management down. For us that are in the trenches, actually dealing with the issues, it's not our job to create strategies, it's just our job to implement them. So this has to be a top-down approach from the business. So we need good communication to the members so that everybody understands their role and what steps to go through if there's an incident. And that's what this portion of communication is all about, ensuring everybody understands what their role is within the jigsaw puzzle of the organisation. And keeping track of the simple steps like keeping applications up to date. So when we talk about cybersecurity culture, we want to create an awareness of what the threats are and the potential risks are, like clicking on that unknown link in an email. So we need to educate people so that we can change their behaviours, and that will help us mitigate the threats that occur. When people understand the systems and how important it is, and in most instances how very easy it is for them to follow the procedures, it helps us prevent any threats occurring. It supports compliance to the strategy within the organisation, and it'll help us monitor the risks and gather information on any new potential risks that appear. It also provides a good mechanism for feedback to come back to the committee. This in turn helps us to address any compliance issues and the reporting of, as I said, any new potential threats to the organisation. Because we need to rely on the people doing their jobs to advise us of the threats to their jobs. We are not subject matter experts across every element within a business. We need the people that are using the systems, that understand the processes, to advise us of those things. So we need to monitor the strategy, make sure it's giving us the returns that we want. So we need to review the systems and controls that we put in place. This will help us measure whether we are successful in our strategy. So what do we sort of look at when we're monitoring? We're looking at people, because their roles can change, they can leave, we have new people arriving. We need to maintain that they have the appropriate level of administrative role in the system to do their job. We need to keep up to date with technology as it changes. Any systems and processes that we have in place. I mean, business is like any other living organism. It goes through changes. It evolves over time. So any system change within the organisation can introduce new threats. People start to get lazy, not complying with procedures. It's quite common. So by having a scheduled update to keep everybody refreshed and motivated in the process of keeping the organisation secure, helps us maintain the strategies. So from our perspective, we need to do any updates, changes to policies as the rest of the organisation evolves. There's no use in keeping something in place if it's no longer working. Alright, so good thing is you can pause the recording. In the classroom at this stage, we break off and do a little bit of brainstorming in groups to start thinking about what risks can be encountered, what strategy we can put in place to mitigate that risk, and forecast any issues or problems evolve. So remember, we need to identify a risk, propose a solution to reduce the risk, and monitor any issues or problems about that strategy moving forward. Alright, so monitoring. We need to keep an eye on any process that we introduce to make sure it's meeting the goals that we're trying to achieve with that process. So we can do this through a whole suite of tools. We can use standard network monitoring software. We can look at the logs that are generated through normal activity against our firewalls, VPNs, virus protections. So everything that we do in networking can generate log traffic, such as, AAA. Who's accessing what, when, how, and why. Just keeping an eye on making sure nothing is abnormal. So this is why keeping system logs, having alerts, even if you get sick of the false positives and so on, we need to go through periodically, review these logs and see if there's anything abnormal that jumps out at us. Compliance measured against our strategy is very important. Now, why do we want to ensure this compliance? Because if there's no compliance to the strategies in place, then your strategy isn't working. Now, so to be able to have something to check against, we need to have a framework and documentation in place to measure whether our control methods are effective. So, for example, our firewalls. Have there been any attacks or breaches against the system? Are staff following our password policies? Are they changing passwords when prompted? Now, my argument to that one would be there's very simple methods that we can put in place to ensure they change passwords when they're prompted. And training of staff is quite an easy process to put in place with management support. Remember, none of this is possible without management support. So compliance, we need to be able to prove what we put in place is effective, and we also need to be able to ensure that people are doing the appropriate things at the appropriate times. So how can we check compliance? We can do spot checks, audits, we can talk to our people, we can run software reports on what our automated systems are doing, review our logs, and review our documentation about our mitigation strategies and the controls we put in place, and then evaluate whether we are actually still compliant or not. Our documentation is there to support our systems and to measure our effectiveness. Alright, so we need to monitor. Our documentation is effectively our baseline that we refer back to ensure that we are getting the results that we set out to get. And think of it as part of the system of continuous improvement that we always come back, monitor, evaluate, and update. So we need to ensure that people and systems are following our mitigation strategies, and then we need to come back and monitor to ensure that those strategies are actually getting us to the point that we want to obtain. So, time to go off and do some research again. So, this is about how to update staff, about the culture and implementation of the strategies. So have a bit of a discussion around that and see how you go. What do we do if we've got non-compliance occurring? Well, this can depend on how we've got our systems structured. Is it a problem with reporting, or is it a specific area of the policy or a procedure that is calling non-compliance? We do need to rectify any issues around non-compliance. These non-compliance issues can have consequences. We can have loss of business, downtime, loss of data. And if we're dealing with personal information such as credit card holders' information, that sort of thing, a lot of businesses are doing online trading. We can face fines for breaches of that confidentiality. So it's very important that we have mechanisms in place and to put those reviews and make adjustments as we need them. We should have clear policies and procedures that guide our employees within the scope of their role. Alright, so we need a clear escalation path so that people know what their role is when an incident occurs, who they report to it, and if that person, that next step in the ladder, can't resolve it, who do they take it to? Okay, we need to have a clear path of resolving issues and reporting. Now this will help to highlight any concerns people have, because there's a clear chain of responsibility and who's responsible for taking action throughout the process. So this will help us reduce any breaches that occur by having everybody understand what their role is within the incident and who to talk to if they believe an incident has occurred or is occurring, and getting that feedback happening. So a bit more reading. So under the Australian Cyber Whistleblower Policy, have a look at that and have a discussion. Again, this is more for in class than in the recording, but not going to change the presentation pack. Okay, feedback processes. We need to have feedback. Why? Without feedback, we don't know whether our solutions are actually doing the job that we want them to do. We also will not find out of any other procedural change that impacts the risk factor if we don't have a mechanism where people are giving us feedback on how our procedures and policies need to evolve and whether they're working or not. Now, again, feedback can be formal or informal. It can be automated, and it will be internal and external. This information needs to be compiled and evaluated. Alright, so into the activities for topic 2. So have a look around, look at our frameworks, and have a discussion around potential risks that a new virus or new employees or updating software can introduce into the systems, and look at identifying potential risk factors involved. One of the things you can do is conduct surveys as part of your feedback. So a third-party tool that anybody can use is the surveymonkey.com site, and you can refer people to that site to complete the survey, and then it will give you a report at the end of it. So have a look on how that works. Next, basically have a look at your project portfolio. Each of these little sessions, workbook, portfolio activities assist you in building your assessment portfolio for the unit. That's the end of topic 2. Thanks for joining us, and I'll see you in the next one.